Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Okay. My name is Colleen Crotty. I'm with the Department of Ecology, and I will be your lovely moderator today. In case anyone is lost, we are at the Retrofits in Forbes Creek Focus on Efficiency and Community Benefits presentation. Our presenters today are Amy Carlson and Jenny Gaus. Amy Carlson is with Jacobs Engineering. She's a consultant project manager for the North Rose Hill Stormwater Retrofit project. And Jenny has worked with surface water at municipal government agencies for the last 20 plus years. She's assisted with the development in City of Kirkland surface water utility since its founding in '98, working on topics and projects such as the NPDES Municipal Stormwater Permit Compliance, Stream and Water Quality Monitoring, Utility Master Planning, and Capital Project Identification. Currently, Jenny is specializing in stormwater retrofit planning to improve flows and water quality in Kirkland streams. She enjoys finding the places where stormwater facilities can help to achieve other city goals as well, and developing projects that benefit the community and the environment. Jenny has a bachelor's in civil engineering from MIT and a master's degree in ecosystem analysis from the University of Washington. And I think we will just take questions at the end. Thank you very much.
All right, how's this for volume? Good? Awesome. Well, welcome. This is a project in the North Rose Hill Basin of Kirkland, and it does list Jacobs Engineering as the prime consultant, but I absolutely want to acknowledge too our partner firms AESI, Cascadia, Indicator, and Lynn & Associates are also part of this team. And in hindsight, I absolutely should have listed individual names on this slide, and I'm sorry that I didn't. All right, the goal of stormwater retrofits here in the Puget Sound are absolutely to reduce peak flows and improve water quality in creeks, which then leads to or provides for ecological benefits in Puget Sound. And as much as that we're sort of preaching to the choir here, I think we all agree, I think we can all agree that it's not easy. Not easy peasy lemon squeezy, which is what my 5-year-old would say. There are a lot of challenges. We continue as practitioners to balance needing those or wanting those ecological benefits with all the other challenges about funding and balancing other priorities, especially with the community. And so this presentation here really focuses on that rub. I just want to sort of set the stage for the presentation before we get into the specifics of this project by talking about some of the challenges and successes over the last 15 to 20 years. I think first and foremost, one of the challenges is that not one size does not fit all with technologies and approaches, and there's no off-the-shelf solution. We all have limited resources, whether they're time or money or both, and we all see these competing priorities, all of which are important. I think it's important, though, too, to talk through successes, how far we've come. I think we've gotten really, really good, frankly, at choosing the appropriate technology for the application. And as Jenny and I were talking too, we sort of noted, isn't it great now that we're in a situation where it actually makes sense from a business perspective to be in the business of stormwater technologies. So seeing a lot of cutting edge technologies to maximize benefit, and it's a really great place to be. The second point under success is we have bench strength. This room is full. If you saw this entire group this morning that are attending this conference, pretty darn amazing, and we really only represent maybe a fraction of the stormwater practitioners here in Washington, which is just fantastic. And 20 years ago, would that have been possible? Maybe not. So just, this is pretty great, the sort of brain trust we have here in Washington around stormwater. I think another success too, we're getting really good about adding value, stormwater value onto other projects, crosswalks, other sort of transportation projects, for instance, plans and programs. And then lastly, I'll just say, we're seeing the importance of providing multiple benefits with our stormwater projects. And so I say this because just to set the stage is that we absolutely have challenges we're all facing, but we've had a lot of successes too. So sort of to even more answer that question, what have we learned about stormwater retrofits over the last 15 to 20 years? I think some of us that have worked in the field for a long time had to laugh a little bit because what have we learned? We've learned that sometimes it snows here, and sometimes it snows here a lot. And I think we all have kind of, I don't know, battle scars, if you will, from this past winter. But it was also, too, super interesting, and I hope you all took the opportunity to go look around and look at some of our drainage patterns during the snow and that sort of rain on snow melt event. So if you're a stormwater dork like me, you probably enjoyed that. All right, so I'll dive into this specific project a little bit, just to share where we are. Well, first I'll say that the North Rose Hill Stormwater Retrofit Project, where we are, is actually submitting 30% design this month. There's still a couple days left this month. And it's actually the 30% design for 3 sites. And so what you're looking at now is actually a basin map that shows 5 sites. These are the 5 sites we went in front of the public with. I'll just say this basin, or this sub-basin, North Rose Hill sub-basin, is sort of straddles I-405 there in Kirkland, and was chosen by the City of Kirkland in the application for ecology grant funding for a couple different reasons. One, because, frankly, this basin wouldn't likely get the stormwater facilities as part of redevelopment. There's not a lot of redevelopment going on in this part of Kirkland. And then lastly, this subbasin contributes more than its share, if you will, of flow to Forbes Creek. I kept on wanting to refer to it as punching above its weight as far as stormwater, thinking then that retrofits would be especially valuable in this area. Just a little bit about this subbasin in pictures. This is an area of Kirkland that was incorporated into Kirkland in the early 1980s and still retains some of its unincorporated King County flavor, if you will. There are definitely some sidewalks and curbs, but there are a lot of streets that don't have that infrastructure. There's definitely some older vegetation. And there's definitely, I'm going to say that there's a lot of people in this area that have lived in Kirkland their entire lives, perhaps even have lived in that same house their entire lives. And we definitely met in our engagement a lot of maybe seniors, fixed income and whatnot, that were concerned about things like property taxes and not at all concerned about stormwater. So just I share that now in the context before we go into the specific projects, because that absolutely came up. All right. I want to share a little bit about the basis of site selection and project design. I know there are 6 bullets here. I'll focus on the first 4, and then the last 2 we'll talk about a little bit more in detail in this presentation. So first and foremost, we selected sites that provide the opportunity to treat as much pollutant-generating hard surface as possible. Primary goal of these projects were to provide a water quality benefit, but also flow reduction to reduce flooding risk downstream was also a focus. The third point, and this is so true of retrofits, we absolutely wanted to maximize water quality and flow reduction benefits at each site, recognizing that in a retrofit situation we don't have all the space that we want to do that. And then the fourth point too, we all love green approaches to stormwater management, but understanding, especially in retrofits, we need to use all the tools available to us in the toolbox, and that included some gray approaches. And so, like I said, the last 2 points, with community benefits where possible and identify other opportunities to coordinate. We'll talk about that a little bit in detail, but absolutely they were part of our basis of site selection and project design. All right, so I mentioned earlier when we looked at the map, we went to the public with 5 potential sites, and the project itself, once selected, we selected as a team 3 sites to move into 30% design, and this is one of the 3. This particular site is an existing, or was an existing stormwater pond, but then this project is retrofitting that pond to make it bigger, to put in bioretention, to change the plumbing such that more flow went into the pond, and then also to add some aesthetic features, softening of the edges, some plants that promote pollination and whatnot. This next site, site 2, actually putting in proprietary water quality treatment and then UIC wells. And this is one that really, in its current form, does not have any sort of community benefits up top on the street side. It's all, once completed, would be fully hidden. What else to say about this? Maybe I'll just leave it at that. And then this third site ends up being, we think it's the most exciting. It also will be the most challenging. And this is one that has a heck of a lot of elements to it. So bioretention cells to treat stormwater coming off the roadway and then any connected driveways and houses. There's a proprietary treatment to treat the flows coming in from off-site onto this location, and then also storage. What we really had envisioned from the beginning was using UIC wells at this location. After geotech came back that we couldn't do infiltration, we switched that to storage. So a lot going on here with treatment, storage, and then the bioretention as well. All right, so now I'm going to transition to talk about lessons learned, and I'm going to focus on the efficiencies related to site selection and design, and then I'm going to hand it off to Jenny to talk about lessons learned related to the community. So my first lesson learned that I want to talk about with efficiencies is just perform survey and geotech early, which is kind of a no-brainer. At the same time, you can't do it everywhere, so it really can't. You can't do it at, we couldn't do it at 5 sites. We could do it at 3 sites. So, and I say that because in the end, this is a good lesson learned as we're putting in 30% design now. We really did have to go back and rethink that site, that last site that I talked about, when we figured that we couldn't do infiltration. We had a nice design there with UIC wells. It was elegant, it was pretty, it was wonderful, and then it wasn't going to work. So something to think about when you're planning a project is when are you going to do that survey and geotech, at what point, knowing that the earlier you do it, you might have to do it at more places because you haven't selected your site. Another lesson learned as far as efficiencies is the importance of coordinating throughout the project. And by coordinating, I mean both with city departments and with the public. And I show this cross-section that we actually went to the public with for this last and final site that we're talking about. And we're so glad we did, because we got the feedback that we certainly, the public wanted to keep their parking, which is not an unusual thing to hear. But also, too, the public wanted to keep the vegetation that was there. And this is the picture that I showed that opened the presentation, and I'll show it again later. There was some really amazing vegetation there. And I don't mean like, 5-year-old plants, whatever. I mean like decades-old rhododendrons that somebody is clearly taking care of, that actually pulling that out would have done more harm to the social network in that area than good in stormwater. So, so just an example of coordinating throughout early on and giving the public something to react to. And I think the other part of this too is coordinating with city departments. Absolutely, we need to know requirements for width of roadway and whatnot. And then two, is there an opportunity to push the envelope or negotiate that within the city before you get too far in the design? This last lesson learned on efficiencies, stay focused. Identify projects that are implementable and acceptable by the public and stakeholders in the short term. So 5 projects that we took to the public with. I think one of our, favorites was this Site 3, and it's a open piece of property proximate to the Seattle City Light, high power lines, a lot of opportunities for stormwater management and a park, and we wanted to do all these things. But that said, realistically, all of those things take several years at best to get right. A lot of coordination, a lot of rounds and whatnot, and in the meantime, every day or every rain event, more pollutants are going downstream. And so, I guess, lesson learned in a good way for us on this project is, yes, absolutely, the city should pursue this project, but do it in parallel with advancement of these individual projects under this grant to get those individual, somewhat easier projects in the ground quicker, to get those pollutant reduction, flow reduction benefits quicker, and in parallel work on these meatier, larger projects, more complicated projects. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jenny to focus on, or to talk about lessons learned with the community benefits.
Thanks, Amy. I've been through a couple of retrofit planning projects at this point, and I think I keep hoping that I could find some efficiencies, find ways to make this quicker. Being an engineer, I'm like, well, maybe it'll be like, what's the Roomba of retrofit planning that just, that just does it? And I haven't found that. And so some of the lessons learned I'll talk today about are more the people things than the engineering things. And it's really makes me think about kind of like painting your house. Like you have to mask the trim and you have to like really get ready. And then the excellent technical work that all these folks have done will happen. But if you don't have things masked and you don't have your public ready and you don't have your other city priorities considered, it's not going to happen. And in the end, the goal is to get something built and in the ground, not to have the best possible technical project. So the first is with your public outreach. We worked with Cascadia Consulting, and they found two things. They found first that they had to be very flexible in their approach to public outreach. We initially scoped having 2 on-site pop-up charrettes where people would show up at these sites, which are kind of in the middle of nowhere. They don't have a lot on them now, and would give us input, and it would all be great. And we found that our turnout was not fantastic. We actually had, so then they sort of paired that with an online survey, to which we got fantastic participation. So we got really good information that way. And then we also had to include some actual door-to-door outreach, because we found that this community was a super busy bunch of working folks. They're not home very often, so we really had to go in the evening, door-to-door, and pair that sort of methods of outreach with very specific things that they could react to. So go to them with something showing buyer retention on their entire street that takes away the parking. Go showing them what a new park will look like. Go show, the more specific you can be, the better reaction you'll get. Because again, I found that if I go with like a surface water master plan, which is like this huge, what's the utility gonna do? There's this deafening silence when you try to get interaction. But if you go with, here's what I'm gonna build on your street, then you get much better reaction, and you can work with that a lot more. So the second lesson was to consider the context, really walk around your neighborhood, figure out what is going on. Again, this particular neighborhood, as Amy mentioned, it was annexed in the 80s. It's much more sort of rural than it is urban, doesn't have sidewalks, has a lot of existing vegetation, has things like group mailboxes that are actually sort of community meeting spots. Has people that have lived there for a long time. They don't want their property values to go up. Sometimes you say, well, green infrastructure, your property value, they don't want that because their taxes would then go up and they feel like they already are struggling to afford to live in Kirkland. So considering all those things as part of your design process is really important and will help to get to a project that the public will support and that will get built. And again, considering what other opportunities that you could provide. And so this is a process of combing through all of your neighborhood plans, your comprehensive plans, talking to your development folks to see if there are subdivisions or plats coming that you might be able to somehow partner or do things with, and really considering all of the non-stormwater stuff that you could add to your project to increase its popularity and its chances of getting built. So in this case, we had a greenway that was going to be coming through for bicycles and pedestrians that was coming through just north of one of our projects. And so we said, wow, this is a great opportunity to add a rain garden that would be very visible and would sort of lead people to ask questions and learn more about stormwater and about what's going on. And so that was an example of just a nice tie-in. Another one was one of our sites. We found that a neighborhood plan had a desire for a trail along the power line corridor, and so we added an access road that was also could be used as a trail to connect through that neighborhood. And so adding those benefits, again, just really increases your chances that things will happen. So overviewing some of the keys to project success. This is sort of an overview. Some of these are the technical, some of these are, again, that coordination and listening to the community. Do your survey and your geotech early. I can't stress this enough. If you don't have already a map created by GeoMap Northwest, they have a wonderful process where they use existing borehole data to create maps. That is a great starting point. It's not the end. In this case, AESI did a wonderful job of taking that map and drawing a line where they thought infiltration could work on one side of the line and not work on the other, but then you need borings to actually confirm, is it going to work? And we had sort of banked on the fact that infiltration would work. And then the borings showed that that didn't work out. And we wish we'd had that information a lot earlier. So again, coordinate early and often. Talk to your traffic planning folks. Talk to your development folks. Talk to your street preservation program. Is this street due to be overlaid next year and your project is going to come the following year and rip it up? Just all of that coordination stuff that makes people support your project and want to do it came through in this project really strongly, and I think that helped it be successful. Again, conduct the public outreach early and often. Make it specific and listen. When the community says they want their parking, don't take away their parking. Figure out another way to do the project. And add those benefits that they want and try to help create the neighborhood that they envision. So again, and then just considering the aspects of the community that are there now. You don't want to be, for example, ripping down existing lovely heritage trees in order to put in your bioretention. That just doesn't make sense. And so considering that as you select your BMPs, we've really been, with this project, I think we've sort of leaned towards things that are underground, that are in the right-of-way, more than I think we expected to at the outset because of existing community features. So, and again, include those extra benefits. Kirkland has a couple of other retrofit projects that are currently in construction, and they've gotten there because of coordination with parks, coordination with other street projects, sidewalk projects, things like that. So just, I can't stress that enough. Just look for those other benefits, those other things besides stormwater that will make your project shine and make it get built. So, and again, just focus on projects that you can build in the short term. There may be other opportunities that are wonderful that you want to pursue in the long run, but keep those in the back and really focus on those ones where you can get them to the point of getting grant projects and getting them built. And this work would not have been possible without the National Estuary Program and the Department of Ecology. I'm extremely grateful that there have been a series of grants, not just this one, that have set the stage for retrofit planning in general in Juanita Creek, that have then looked at subbasins and have really supported this work. Other people's money is a huge motivator for, for this work, and we would not be where we are without that support. So I'm really grateful to Ecology. So thank you, and with that, we'll take questions.